You're listening to Freight Famous, presented by Rose Rocket, bringing you the people that make trucking move. From behind the scenes into the limelight. Here's your host, Justin Bailey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Freight Famous. I am your host, Justin Bailey. And today with us is Stephen Kastelic, the CEO of BlinkSync Technologies. Now, BlinkSync Technologies has built a pair of glasses that drivers wear that help you help them measure how tired they might be, how much their energy level might be down or up, based on some really cool sensors in actually a pretty sharp pair of glasses. Conversation we have today ranges from data that might help inform new mandates in terms of times on the road, why talking to customers is so important and actually how hard it is to do early days as a business. And, a lot of stuff around just driver safety, obviously, because really that's the name of the game for BlinkSync. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the show and as much as I did, hosting it. Before I introduce the show today, though, I am excited to tell you about Rose Rocket's TMS referral program. If someone you know is looking for a TMS, Rose Rocket would love to have you join our incentivized referral program. To learn more, email us at referralpartners@roserocket.com, and a member of our team will sure to be in touch. Psst. We're going to give you money to refer the TMS. Hi, Stephen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, man. Would love to hear a little bit about BlinkSync and maybe your background a bit and how you came to this problem and wanting to try and solve it.
Yeah, well, I have family and friends in the trucking industry. My dad's cousin actually drove for Sargento. But, I went to the University of Oklahoma as an entrepreneurship major. And one of the ideas that I came up with at that college was something to help prevent accidents. I did tons of research in the trucking industry. I interviewed hundreds of drivers, fleet managers, safety managers. And I learned that there's an information gap in the trucking industry. There's tons of information that we have on the vehicles, like the trucks and the inventory and the trailers. But there's really not a whole lot of data on the human themselves. And what I came up with was something to track human performance in order to boost productivity and make sure the drivers are on the road during the safest times possible. That way, it's a proactive approach to preventing accidents even before the drive begins, as a way to optimize shifts and reduce the risk of accidents in advance. And the way it works is a software that syncs wearable tech together. And what we started with was smart glasses, because that's the leading indicator for drowsiness, like during the daytime while you're driving. A lot of truck drivers already wear glasses, like sunglasses, but these are pretty much normal glasses. However, the nose piece is tracking my blinking and my posture, and that's feeding into the app. And our app shows you your body's energy level. For example, 0 to 100%. And that gives you an idea of exactly when you can expect to feel drowsy in order to help plan ahead and know when the best times to take a break maybe, and when the best times are to be on the road. And just to have that hard, solid data as evidence in defense against anybody trying to sue you as a truck driver. That happens a lot. Just like how you get the forward-facing camera to defend yourself, this BlinkSync is just more evidence in your pocket to show that you are a good driver and you're doing the best you can to stay safe.
Okay, so there, for those listening, this will not be effective for you, but for those watching, can you take the glass off and show me them again?
Yeah.
You're in them now. And so just put them up to the camera as if I'm looking through them. So yeah, there we go. That's cool. Yeah, I can see everything. Yeah, beauty. So what if I wear prescription glasses as I do? Can these get prescriptions in them? How do you think about that?
That's right. So whenever you order these frames, the lenses just come blank like this. You simply just take the frame to your local lens crafters. They'll measure out the size of the lens and they can put in any prescription that you need. Or what we recommend also along with your prescription is transition lenses. That way you can wear them at nighttime and the daytime.
Okay, cool. So let's do this. So I'm driving, I've got the glasses on. So you're measuring basically, so BlinkSync, creatively named essentially, is measuring my as we start to get tired, our blinks get longer. I'm oversimplifying this, I'm sure, but it's like
That's right.
there's obviously cues that our eyes are giving us to suggest that we're getting drowsy. And then what happens? Like, so I'm getting drowsy. Does this like ping me? Does this wake me up? Does this send something back to dispatch? What's sort of the next stage once the glasses detect that I'm getting drowsy?
So we have it set up for individual drivers and companies as well. So trucking companies can see the energy levels of all of their drivers, and they will get notified if a driver reaches low energy. But even outside a company, all we have at this time is our beta version, and what it does is just shows a notification on your phone, just like it does any other notification. So if you're driving and you got a text or a missed call, depending on how you have your notifications set up in your truck, maybe you already hear all that stuff already. Like if you get a text, you hear a ding. This would be the same. So if you reach low energy, you would hear a notification sound. Not that we're encouraging to use the phone while you're driving. Obviously, the idea is to be, reduce the amount of distractions as possible. But everything is logged within the app on a timeline, and even before you look in the app, on your lock screen, the timestamp of the notification of when you reach low energy is still there. So that gives you an idea of when you were low energy, but then you can that's all of that is saved within the app on a timeline.
Got it. And so this is this is early. I'm curious. Sort of where are you in the evolution of the business?
We are brand new. We just had the beta version available last year. We did alpha and beta testing with a few trucking companies. Saw really positive results on average across the board, 24% reduction in unsafe driving behaviors.
And what does that mean?
Like speeding, swerving, abrupt braking, things like that. On average, between all the drivers, they did all that stuff 24% less of the time.
Why do you think that is? It doesn't seem. I'm sort of thinking that like causation here. Is that because I'm just gonna throw like my own like guess out, and then you can just tell me I'm completely off track here. But is that because there's a sense that they're being monitored, so they're doing that, or is it because this is? I guess I'm trying to figure out like the correlation between getting tired and hard braking.
Yeah, I'd say it's a bit of both. The first being, yes, Hawthorne effect, the fact that you are being monitored. Yeah. I think that does play to it, especially since it's just beta version. That the AI within the app isn't even active yet. It's supposed to learn each person on an individual level. That way it's more accurate, but we haven't gathered enough user data yet. Right. So this beta version just sort of shows umbrella conclusions from the data we've gathered so far of the drivers and myself, and then just secondary data out there on the web. But I say it's a combination of Hawthorne effect, and the drivers really do benefit from the basic version that it is, even though it is generic readings. Some of the drivers still identified with what they were seeing within the app, and they loved it.
Cool. And so early days, good positive results on the initial beta. What are some of the, sort of the future based on what you've learned today, what's next? And, let's just play happy path, because nothing ever goes that way, and things can be up and down, but we don't need to talk about that. Let's just talk about the next few years. What are you trying to do? And, product expansion or just, is it more about drilling down on the glasses? Like, how are you thinking about the next, couple of years?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas thrown our way. We're learning a lot from all of our user feedback, and we've already made improvements to the glasses. But really, the idea is that BlinkSync just makes software, and we're going to eventually make more and more wearables compatible with our software, and you'll be able to sync multiple devices together. So maybe drivers already use Apple Watches, for example. They can sync that with the glasses to have even more enhanced accuracy on predicting when drivers can expect to feel fatigued. And also just for convenience, maybe drivers aren't used to wearing glasses, but they do wear a watch, and so that allows for more options. And the wearable market is growing and growing and growing. And instead of you having to run multiple apps, like one for each wearable, BlinkSync allows you to sync them all together onto one app.
Okay, that's sweet. So this is a software play, and that's a much more. I know we're not doing like startup coaching or like investing and stuff, but if we were, I'd say that's a much more interesting business as far as I'm concerned. So the idea is, I love that actually. So this is, let's take the emerging market of wearables that we don't even know where this is necessarily going to go, because things are popping up all the time. It could be vests that you're wearing that are measuring your heart rate and these types of things. It could be Apple watches that are measuring stuff. It could be a Garmin watch even. So watch, but different type of a software. And your thinking is kind of you're the single source of truth for the wearable devices and sort of drivers' health as it pertains to data extrapolated from wearables.
Exactly. The more data that we get and the more types of wearables that are synced, we'll be able to provide even more conclusions beyond just driver fatigue. We can even have distraction scores, stress level scores, things like that.
Got it. And are you and so what's the next phase from a customer perspective, or are you still thinking beta? Like, where are you kind of in the evolution of go to market?
Right now, this launch is our beta version. It's our initial product. All it does is sync with these glasses, and it shows the generic energy readings. The glasses it is collecting your data, so it is being saved, but it's not exactly being used to custom tailor the app just yet. Eventually, the idea is that once we have a lot of users, we will get the AI active and it will custom tailor to each individual user. That way it's more accurate. For the time being, the beta version is $5 a month. You just simply go to our website to sign up for everything. The glasses are $350 a piece.
Got it. So what happens? Like what? So we get so there's the push data, which is, okay, this driver's tired, this driver's heart rate's accelerated. Again, I'm kind of in a place where we've aggregated some wearables and now we're pulling insight. And
okay,
let's pretend you have enough data for the AI to actually be effective, right?
Yeah.
What is then, like, so what? Right? Like, so what now what? Like, what is the outcome of that? What can I do with, like, what's the push data now?
So the data that you'll be getting is your body's energy level. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think about this in terms of I can take these things that are, maybe let me reword the question a little bit differently, because that was a little bit abstract. It's to say, like, I can gain these insights in a reactionary way. But what are proactive things that potentially I could look at doing, or what are some things that I can do now to avoid this happening at all in the future? If that's even a thing, maybe I'm projecting.
Yeah, no, that is the whole idea, is to be as proactive as possible. It's currently, when we look at the sensors on the trucks and the notifications that are in place there, they are reactionary, and we really are trying to take that proactive approach. Going back to the AI, it's going to take a little time to get those accuracies down to a fine point. So like a week or two, but even during that time, you yourself as a user will have your timeline filled out, and you'll be able to yourself as you draw patterns from what you're seeing in your timelines. And the idea is that you realize what time of the day that you have the most energy, and sort of if you can shift your schedule around that way you're on the road at a time that you're least likely to get drowsy.
Do you think is this something that is not? Are people surprised when they see the data, or like, have people been like, "Wow, I didn't realize I was tired," or like, is it something that is more? I wouldn't say subconscious, but that's the best word I can come up with right now. Like, has there been surprises, I guess, in this from the driver specifically?
From what I've heard, and we actually have a video from the drivers that we beta tested with. You can see some of their words for yourself. However, no, for the most part, the drivers are pleased with what they see. There's not a whole lot of shock. I can think of one instance where, yes, somebody was, so within the app, we have a feedback method where you can tell us how you actually feel. That way, it's just another point to triangulate the data. It's the beta version. Yes, I can think of one driver who disagreed with what he saw. And he kept trying to tell us that he had a lot of energy, and the app said he had low energy. So yes, it happened. So the point, I mean, but if the AI was active, then it would have learned him to a more accurate degree. That driver, I think, did regional, so he may not have even worn the glasses as much as an over-the-road driver, for example.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't really necessarily the angle of the question, but I'm glad you actually answered it, because you brought up something pretty interesting around sort of the like subjectivity of energy from like the user. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, no, I'm totally high energy, but it's like there will come a point where the glasses will just be right, or the wearable device will just simply be right. And,
Exactly.
and I think it's interesting too to think that through. And that's kind of what it was more around. It was like, not in a derogatory way, and from a curious perspective, just like, are people disagreeing with it because their view of what it means to be low energy, I'm going to use like air quotes because it becomes now subjective, like that's just interesting human behavior, I think, in terms of how I think I feel versus what the data is telling me. You get this like sleep trackers, right? Like, I often find people feel like they sleep worse than they do from the tracker, and I don't know which one's true. It's like, oh, I slept terribly, but you get like an 80 sleep score. It's like, okay, do you have a false perception of what a good quality sleep actually is, or is the device inaccurate on those? And it's sort of similar to me in the effect of where it's like, what is that? But I think it'll be interesting over time, because I think as you gather more data and you create more baselines, the data in your system should in theory become harder to argue, really, because you will be creating a more of a mass pile of information that I think could, I don't know. That's interesting. That's a kind of an interesting, I think, human behavior. I think another thing around human behavior that I sort of have to ask, and I wonder sometimes how this narrative is changing, and maybe this is just dated information. And, sometimes I feel like I've been in the space too long that I'm kind of regurgitating stories from yesteryear that just may not apply today. And, but one of the things I think about often with drivers is just their general disinterest with being tracked or monitored. And I think maybe I just go back to kind of the ELD mandates and how that was thought to be, and the pushback around that, and still kind of some pushback around that, and some of the other tracking tools that are out there that will ping your phone, and do they want to accept or not? And I know just from being in the field that those are still a little more contentious than I think maybe someone who's not in the industry would, could appreciate. I wonder about these devices and how drivers are feeling about, the idea of more tracking, more quote unquote surveillance. Have you had any conversations around that?
Yes, all the time. So yes, a lot of drivers do not like to be monitored. And yes, there is a lot of pushback on ELDs and truck sensors, but, wearables is one way to sort of use that momentum in their favor. This is a way so with these glasses, there's no cameras at all, so there's no surveillance. A lot of companies are wanting to install inward facing cameras on their trucks, and we've seen even more pushback on that. So we've taken the approach with wearables because it really is just data on a spreadsheet. The drivers aren't being watched to the degree of surveillance. Maybe the drivers sort of accept the reality that they are going to be tracked. I mean, regulations are regulations, but if the regulations were, instead of taking truck data, then they were taking the human data, maybe the regulations would eventually allow more flexibility for the truck drivers. And this is sort of a long-term play here, and getting a little political, but
do it.
Yes, the idea is that the data derived from the wearable tech will eventually have the lobbyists realize that the trucking hours aren't effective, and perhaps they will allow more flexibility in the regulations.
That's interesting. And so the thinking is that the idea is that you could do this on a more custom basis, on a per driver basis, because it's based on where they're at from a fatigue perspective. Maybe they need to rest after 6 hours, but maybe they can go for 20. Is that the idea?
Yeah, or even like resetting your clock, or everybody everyone's day starts differently, and people run into traffic at different times. And they don't have a load to pick up right away, so they're running their clock. They need, and things like that, trying to get from one place to the other, maybe outside your clock, but you're still running miles, things like that. Yeah, I think what the play here will be is flexibility. I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not going to tell you what the regulations should be. I think the experts will eventually come up with that once the human performance data is shown there. There'll be other experts that'll be able to tell us exactly how flexible these hours should be. But that is the direction that I do see it going. More flexible hours. That way the drivers can maybe, yes, accomplish more hours than they previously could have. Or just use the hours in the way that's most safely and most beneficial for them.
Yeah, there's also the idea that as you're talking about that, and think it's a really interesting concept, and I think again, data at scale could allow for those things. So I think that's actually an interesting idea, and it's also interesting too because then if you think about it from an individual perspective versus a blanket perspective, then things like fitness and age and those things will come into play as well. Because it's really difficult to say that, and I'm assuming you don't have enough data, and if you do, you can inform me on this. But I'm curious if you have thoughts on this. Have you had more fit or less fit drivers, and they're showing meaningful differences in terms of endurance, for lack of a better term? Or age even, where you have younger drivers or older drivers, or maybe it's the inverse and it's not what you might think?
No, we do. I'd say we do not have enough data to conclude that.
Yeah. Is it, I just wonder if this is something that comes as a result of the collection of the data where there puts a premium on, and again, I'm probably just going into like space a little bit here, but there's this kind of idea to me that's like, do you end up finding a one particular, and it could be anything. It could be like this particular, I don't know, ethnicity gets less tired. This particular age bracket gets less tired. This particular gender, I don't know, anything. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of interesting big data insights that could come probably as a result of having enough of this. And I wonder if that would then lead to, I don't know, premium rates for whoever that might be. If drivers who are more fit, if you kind of a world where regulations are pertain to the individual driver based on the data that their bodies are giving off, and I'll just go with what I think would be the case. And again, sometimes these things can be super counterintuitive. But if like the youngest, fittest drivers are the ones who have the most, they can go the longest, they become more valuable in a sense, right? Potentially. But again, these things can go weird. It could end up being the exact, it's like the guy who's like, you know, he drinks like a 26er every day and smokes a pack of cigarettes and lives to they're 96 years old. It doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go. So maybe it's not the case, but I wonder if sort of down the road in that state, you end up creating very interesting learnings around certain types of people at various stages of life and health that have better, you know, again, durability, for lack of a better term.
I mean, so yeah, let's back up a little bit. I'm even on a like going back to the privacy thing. Yes, a lot of stuff can be learned from the data, but we're only going to share it with the user's permission, and that's a thing that they can choose within the app. How much do you want their data to be shared, just within BlinkSync, just within yourself, or even used to further extents like the lobbyist research, the scientific research. Yes, this can be used as a safety tool, but the user must opt in to provide that data for research purposes. Anyway, yes, once that research data is collected, yeah, the idea is, yes, maybe we can start coming up with conclusions like that. It will be interesting to see what they will be. From what I've read, it really just depends on the individual, and that's another reason why we're taking this approach. Because depending on the age bracket, there's going to be exceptions, because someone is really unhealthy at age 50, but there's also another 50-year-old who's really healthy, and they are actually an expert in the field, so they've gotten trucking under control. Just because you're young, you may be inexperienced and therefore maybe more distracted on the road, maybe, and just not fully aware of the risks. So you maybe you're Coasting, there's a lot of factors in play, and everybody is different. And like I said, it'll be interesting to come. I think BlinkSync can be that research tool to find these conclusions. And going to insurance premiums, yes, this is just another one of those safe driving tools that insurance companies want trucking companies and individuals to use as a way to prove that they are a safe driver. And yes, the idea is that insurance companies will see that you use BlinkSync. They see that you've kept, I don't know how deep they'll look at your data, obviously user permission, but they say you have BlinkSync, and they'll optimize your insurance premium.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a fair conclusion. And I have to imagine a value prop that the companies that are working with you are thinking about. That's, to me, it's, sort of that's a top two business problem to solve, right?
Yes, insurance for trucking companies is one of the most expensive items.
Absolutely. And accidents becoming incredibly expensive. And then these nuclear verdicts you kind of were talking about a little bit without saying it. But I mean, these things, and thinking about just having more data to support yourself in the case of getting sued or something to that effect. So I want to go back to, you'd mentioned the inward facing cameras. And I actually think that's a really interesting sort of parallel to the product in that those are things that I've been seeing recently. And if I understand, and actually, I don't really understand, but what I think is that they're essentially doing the same thing that you're doing with the glasses, right? They're basically trying to look for cues of fatigue, largely based on blink patterns. Is that correct?
I have seen inward cameras like that. Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess that this is feels much less invasive in that regard. Now, you had mentioned that the driver has the ability to share the data, but wouldn't the company that they work for, again, I'm assuming this isn't like a single owner operator, this is somebody working for like a fleet, the company ultimately would be invested and kind of need to see that data from that particular driver, wouldn't they?
That's right.
Okay, so then the driver can turn off permissions, but if they're working for a fleet, they'll need to keep those on, obviously, because that's
exactly.
I don't think that's a big deal. I think that's important. It's just to clarify to that, because I think if I'm a fleet owner, this is how I ultimately keep things safe, is understanding what driver is having the problems and how we can intervene and how we can help them, right?
Oh man, so within a company, something we learned from testing is there's actually, different ways to approach this. It's not like you have to make your drivers use it every day. A lot of trucking companies do remedial training. So, like they just have the drivers come in once or twice a year or more to sort of brush up on safety with driving. And maybe one way to have them use BlinkSync temporarily could be during that remedial training. Maybe even 1 week, have them use BlinkSync. Is just going to bring more awareness to the driver themselves, to their safety and their behaviors, to make sure that they're going to, at full capacity when they're driving. But that is one way a trucking company could benefit from this. But some drivers will just take to it more than others, and they maybe they already have prescription glasses, and they're going to step right up and want to use it every day. And they look at it as an upgrade to what they currently have, and compared to the cameras, yes, much less invasive. And BlinkSync also provides that predictability, and compared to the cameras that are sort of reactionary. I've seen those cameras in action. What happens is it sends like a 30-second video clip to the safety manager through an email. The safety manager has to open it up, look at it, see what's going on, and then they have to call that driver and make sure they're okay. And sometimes they're not. So they'll like they'll say something like, "Oh, I stayed up too late last night." Or then they'll come up with another excuse that like, nah, the camera messed up or something. I've actually seen it in the office. I've seen it happen. And so we thought we'd come up with something more proactive to provide even during the remedial training, during the onboarding training, is just a step in advance before the last moment of, by the time you're driving and you're drowsy, there's not a whole lot you can do in that last moment. So it's better to prepare in advance and get those shifts optimized to reduce the risk of accidents.
I love these as a training tool and even an onboarding tool. I think it's an excellent kind of use case, a way to ease yourself into the product even a little bit. It's a nice way to kind of to start using it, even to introduce your drivers to it, and maybe a less of like, here, wear these every single day, which again we know is not necessarily, it's we're sensitive in which the way we communicate with drivers, and so we want to maintain that level of sort of sensitivity and empower them. So pushing anything on them. And again, I think future state, when they're already wearing the smartwatch, I think that's beautiful, because it's just the data's already there. Download to this, and now away you go, and you don't need to do anything else. Are there any other biomarkers that you're particularly interested in?
So when it comes to fatigue, these are going to be the most accurate sensors. Another issue with those cameras is that they're infrared sensors, so they really aren't as accurate as these metal pieces. They're EOG sensors. They're picking up muscle movement around your eyes. So it's actually kind of hard to fake these, like pretend you're tired. But these are very accurate. And as far as detecting drowsiness, I think these are state of the art. This is the most advanced smart glasses for this type of data. And any other biomarkers that I mentioned in is going to be sleep data. So even though you're wearing the watch and you have it synced to the app, I think what's more important from the watch is going to be the sleep data. Not necessarily even though it does track your heart rate during the day, that I don't think that's going to be a strong indicator of fatigue. It's going to be a little late. By the time your heart rate slows down, your eyes have already been closed. So what I want from the watch in terms of data is the sleep. Then that's what I told drivers too. Whenever we were in beta, some drivers didn't want to wear the glasses, and I asked them if they would do a watch, and they said yes. And I also added the caveat is that if you're going to do the watch, you have to wear it while you sleep, because that's the data that's going to be most helpful to predict when you're going to be tired. And they were okay with that.
Is there a way to get? I'm going to nerd out a little bit on like the hardware here. Is there a way to get the data without the glasses? Like, you showed me the little sensors that are basically would be the nose pieces for those just listening. Is there a way to activate, like, I guess in theory you could wear those glasses without the lenses. It might look a little goofy, but you could do that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And then I guess, so as I'm just like staring at you right now, and I'm trying to like shrink the package a little bit further, right? Like, how do you kind of, I guess, like, is there a way? It's a very convenient placement in terms of where they're, and again, for those who can't see it, it's really, these look like regular glasses with what would be nose clips on them. They kind of fit exactly where a nose clip would go. So it has definitely no, it looks like, and they're being modeled beautifully right now. It looks like a regular pair of glasses. So they're very convenient where they happen to pick up the data. Can they be moved around? Like, can you get that same pickup from your temple or under your eye, or an inch down your nose, or is where they are is very important?
Where they are is very important. We actually first tested Bluetooth earpieces where it kind of like stuck out like kind of below your eye, but the issue was that it used infrared and it wasn't very accurate. It was hard to even pick up a reading on the individuals we tried it on. So these are the best sensors that we found to be, and they look very normal. What's cool about this latest model is I can take a screwdriver and actually pull this nose piece out. Okay. And you're talking about things we want to do next. If we can somehow find a way to get these sensors onto other like more styles of frames, maybe even safety grade frames. Some types of truck drivers, they work in oil fields and they're required to wear safety goggles. And if we can get the sensor into safety grade goggles, that would allow for more users and more options for the style of glasses, for example.
Would you think about shipping them out just as sensors, or you would want to put them all together? Like, would this be like a retrofit of the sensors, or you would send these out as full still packages? Just you'd have varying degrees of eyewear.
I guess it depends on the design. If the sensor could clip onto like an existing glasses, then that we would just send that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it clipped on, maybe it clipped onto the ball cap,
Yeah.
then we would just send the sensor. But the way it is now, in the frame, there's a notch actually cut out for this sensor, so that way it like fits in,
Yeah.
so that way you can screw it in. So that would be an example if we were to do that to another set of glasses, retrofitting those, retrofitting safety glasses, so that way you can screw in the sensor. And maybe we'll have both available on the
Yeah.
website, the sensor by itself and the glasses that they fit into.
Yeah, and not to go too deep into it, but you feel like there's probably a replacement sensor opportunity even on a pair of glasses that maybe were purchased from your pair of goggles and the sensors have broken, or like how sensitive are they? Can they get wet? Can they, like, what's the kind of the durability of these suckers?
Well, I mean, so the frame, depending on the frame itself is really durable. I mean, this is the sportiest look that we can get for now.
Yeah.
But the sensors, they are pretty fragile.
Yeah.
Whenever you adjust them, you got to be pretty careful. I've never broken them.
Right.
But and I have none of the drivers have broken them either. But yeah, just be very careful. They're just metal.
Yeah.
Even the attachments are metal as well. So just be careful. But no, other than that, they're really good. Yeah. I think these are the best sensors that you can get in terms of fatigue detection.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It's fascinating. And again, I'm just like thinking about sort of future state and selling these things, and the hardware really isn't. It's the software is the business here, and the hardware is the sort of the way of obviously gaining access to the data to make the software valuable. So you're really not looking to maximize margin here on hardware. This is really about getting them into users' hands at a relatively low cost and really optimizing the data and the software as the business model. Is that accurate?
Exactly. That's what the push we're making right now is. Even though the app doesn't have all the bells and whistles that we want it to have, we still just want to get it into the hands of many drivers as possible, start using it, start gathering this data, and it'll be even though it's the beta version, it can still be beneficial, and we just need to get the awareness out there. That way, it'll turn the heads of the insurance companies. Trucking companies will be able to show that they're implementing BlinkSync along with the rest of their safety methods, and then start getting those premiums. I find that to be a very short-term thing that can start the more users we get. So that's the idea. That's why I'm making it as cheap as possible. The app is $5 a month, and you're right. All that I can control, all that BlinkSync is the software. We partner with a glasses company to make these. So, but they do take our feedback very well. They've already made some improvements to make them more comfortable and minimize the sensor. They're really, really nice. Yes, the idea is that we're just software, so we're just making it $5 a month, trying to make it really digestible for the drivers and the companies, so we can get it into the hands of as much users as possible.
I think that's a great model, and I think let the glasses makers make the glasses. I think you don't want to take that on anyway, and I think that they're pretty stylish looking, man. That's a pretty nice, like, it's a good model, and I imagine again it took some iterations, and this stuff just doesn't happen overnight. So you've done a nice job getting to where they're these look good, and I think from a driver's perspective, like that, I don't think anyone would have a problem with wearing these in terms of like a look perspective. And sure, again, you're going to probably get even more advanced with some of the styles going forward. I would be curious, just from like the business side of things, like what were some of the really big challenges to kind of even just getting to this stage? And there's a lot of challenges that still are waiting for you, from here on in. But what were some of the big challenges to get here?
Customer research, that's a lot of something that startups may not do thoroughly enough, is to really know your customer. There's sort of a simple story from the entrepreneurship college where somebody comes up with these blue widgets and they go off and sell them. They try to sell them anyway, but nobody's buying them. And they go and ask the people they're trying to sell it to, hey, why aren't you buying these blue widgets? And the customer says, well, if you had just asked us, we actually wanted red widgets. If you had just asked us beforehand, then you could have made the correct type of widget. It's a sort of a oversimplified story, but it's just really harps on the fact that it's how important it is to talk to your customers before coming up with a product. And there's two types of businesses: small businesses and startups. A small business could be a trucking company where you can make your initial investment on your equipment and essentially start getting revenue right away. And but with a startup, there's a lot of research and development involved. Product development, testing. So those are more challenges that come with a startup. So you have to raise capital. That's a huge challenge, and it's a chicken and egg thing to balance. The investors don't want to invest because you don't have any traction, but the reason why you don't have any traction is because you don't have enough money to make a product. And so that's a huge challenge, is finding that initial capital. Luckily, the University of Oklahoma liked my idea so much, and they gave us our initial launch funding, and that got us off the ground a little bit. It allowed us to conduct more interviews and actually test a version with some drivers and get going on the development. One thing another challenge is getting employees together. I think COVID has sort of like taught us a lot that, a lot of stuff can be accomplished remotely. I'd say a challenge would be to minimize your expenses, be as lean as possible. We started with an in-house development team, but we switched to a outsourced development team. Don't get me wrong, they're in the US, but they're all remote. And it's just more lean that way. And taking the software approach is another lean method. That way we don't have inventory and warehousing to pay for overhead. So just any way you can reduce your costs, have your employees work from home. That way you're not renting out a building, paying energy if possible. That's a way you can save money. That way you can extend your runway as long as possible. And if I could change how we spent our money, I would have, I did go about this with a team, so it wasn't just me, but I would have probably not poured so much into our business tools. Instead, I would have poured more into just product development. Perhaps we would have had an Apple Watch synced by now, for example.
Do you mean at tools like Slack and things like that? You're just talking about like collaboration softwares and things like that?
CRMs that cost $350 a month. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, you'll need it sometime, but yeah, there's a time and a place. And I think to your point, at this stage, it is about product iteration. It is about building things that people want, which is your blue widget, red widget story. And I think it's interesting what you're saying about customer research, because that was the first. I asked what's been challenging. You said customer research, and maybe as a listener you'd say, well, I mean, that's not that difficult. You just get in and talk to some people. I think what it lies in that statement is a couple things. One, it's harder to do that. It's harder to get in front of people, and depending on your personality set, not everyone's built just to go out there guns a-blazing. So that can sometimes be a real challenge just from that perspective. But the other one is, I think what's really, really difficult about customer interviews and gaining data is really trying to separate. So when, one thing is a fluke, when you hear it once, it's a fluke. When you hear it twice, it's data. And that can be really, really scary. And that can still be a red herring. And I think getting enough interviews under your belt and not just saying like, okay, we talked to 8 people, they all said the same thing, let's just go, right? Because you get the enthusiasm and your need to move fast can really overwhelm you, to not sort of see through, like, I'm going to talk to 50 customers. And even if the 49th person said the exact same thing as the first one, I'm talking to that 50th to make sure that we have a breadth of information from a breadth of use cases to make sure that it's consistent enough that we can move forward with some things and learn some things and be wrong about some things. It's so critical. And I can say early days for me, I made those mistakes because I really am I'm fueled by enthusiasm. And so for me, it was like, oh, I heard something twice. I'm like, this is the deal. Go for it. Right. So I think that's actually what lies in that statement. If I'm going to just, pretend I know what you're thinking, or what you've been through. But I think that's a big part of that initial customer research is just doing it and doing a lot of it and not getting, not taking shortcuts in that, because it is. And if you do that, you are signing up for an immense amount of work and some difficult conversations, because you have conviction in what you're building, you have ideas, and it's really hard to hear people shit on your ideas and tell you why it's not going to work, even though you know they're wrong. But it's really hard to be diplomatic in those, situations too. So, and I swear to God, I feel like some people sign up for, customer interviews just to basically tell you how shit your idea is, and they've got no other agenda other than that. So you have to be prepared for that and prepared for rejection. And, I know for me personally, it's not something I've been great at in my life. I don't do well with rejection. So, man, I appreciate you saying that. I think that's actually very accurate. And I think there's a lot sort of underneath the some of those statements too, in terms of even like, burn rate. And, it's not even spending money on, I don't know, were we spending money on HubSpot or something? It's like, it's the distraction of it, right? It's just
building the company compared to building your customer base.
Yeah.
That's the way I would put it. Instead of trying to, I don't know, because we started with an in-house team and it was just more about keeping the employees happy.
Yeah.
It really should have been about keeping the customer happy.
Yeah. And usually the long tail, there will be happy employees with happy customers. When you deliver value, a broken record, I probably say this on every podcast, or at least say it every day, but extraordinary value wins every time. And so you deliver that value up front, the long tail will be profit. The long tail will be, should be, if managed properly, good culture. The long tail will be happy employees, because you have happy customers. Look, man, you want to build, you could build a 300-person business, and if you have incredibly miserable, disenfranchised customers, you're not going to have a very good team. I don't care how many, latte machines or whatever they're called that you put in your office, or ping pong tables. It's not going to solve that problem. So I totally agree. Happy customers first, and everything else will follow.
Exactly. Another thing they taught us in the entrepreneurship college is when investors are looking at two companies, and maybe they both have good ideas, they're gonna pick the one that's got a better team. But every case is different, and it just depends on teammates are important as well. It's great to surround yourself with experts.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's true. I think there's other factors in there too, though. I mean, you could have a great team, but you have a really small addressable market. No one's going to give you $1. So there's a lot of other things have to be, but if all things being equal, and you're a solo founder versus somebody who's got a strong co-founding team, with experience, even, yes, they'll get the deal every time. I mean, I think getting in front of investors it's not dissimilar to getting in front of customers. I mean, you're selling at this stage of the business. It's just selling the vision, right? And I think if there's a big enough market, you'll find the right investors.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be most impressive to investors anyway, is the number of users. Some people will tell us to get on Shark Tank, but a lot of the companies that are on there, they've already got a few hundred users, and that's what the investors really want to see.
Yeah, that's also not real, in a sense, and honest, like those that that's Hollywood, and those deals proposed on that show are pretty terrible. They're not founder-friendly deals. You can get a much better deal off camera, brother. So I'll just, if I can offer advice here, I'm not going on TV to try and raise money. Those are about some of the worst term sheets you'll ever see. So I would definitely do it in a different way. But listen, man, it's been great talking to you today. I love this idea. I love the business. I think you're totally onto something here. And where can our listeners check you out?
Blinksync.com, BLYNCSYNC.com.
Let's do that again. Spell it one more time.
BLYNCSYNC.com.
Okay, man. Thank you. This has been great. Make sure you listeners like and subscribe already. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. Have a good day, everybody.